Welcome back here on the College Basketball Review Studio podcast. As always, Matt Baczynski with Ariel Puderman and Dan Siegel. New location for me, by the way, on break at my full-time job. So, never a better way to talk college basketball than on your break from work. But, guys, we're going to get into it for our latest episode. Week 6 recap here in the college basketball slate, and then looking ahead at some game picks for Week 7. So, without further ado, guys, the weekly J. Wright Award. Dan, why don't I start with you? Something good or wholesome that you saw in college hoops this week?
Yeah, just an annual tradition that they do at Madison Square Garden now, and that is the Jimmy V Classic. They have this doubleheader that they do, and it's a fundraiser to raise money for the Jimmy V Foundation for cancer research, and it's just a nice wholesome thing. You know, they have the Jimmy V speech out, displaying throughout the game that don't give up, don't ever give up, that whole speech. And this year actually featured 2 great games as well. BYU beating Clemson after being down 21 at half, and then the AJ DeBonsa show kind of taking over, and then UConn beating Florida in the second game in a close one, or one that I guess ended up being close as well. So 2 good games, nice money for cancer research, and honoring Jim Valvano. Good all around here.
Ariel, what you got for us? You can't really beat the Jimmy V, but do you got something else for your J. Wright Award?
I definitely can't, and I'm going to stay in New York. I feel like we always end up staying in New York with mine, but I'll go with the St. Bonaventure Bonnies. I mean, 10-1 to start the season. This isn't a team like Buffalo, who I talked about last week, who has been pretty bad, and now they're just resurging. They've always been solid, but I mean, 10-1 is an impressive start, with their only loss being to North Carolina. You can tell that their GM, Adrian Wojnarowski, he's got a bunch of friends in the department from the NBA, and they're definitely giving him some tips, because when you look at this roster, I mean, they don't have any stars. They don't have any clear top guys, especially compared to some of the other teams in their conference, but they seem to be getting it done. They don't have the most impressive strength of schedule, but win's a win nonetheless. So keep an eye out for those Bonnies, because so far so good for this program.
Yeah, and for my weekly J. Wright Award, guys, I have the Maine Black Bears coming in at 0-11. They take down Boston University on the road. So first off, you got to give props to a team that starts 0-11, right, and finally able to get their first win. Because once you get through that many games and you haven't won yet, you start to think, is this team going to get a win this season? And, of course, Maine is able to do that. But it also just explains I got to explain what they took to get there, right? Losing by 6 against Quinnipiac. Losing by 7 to Merrimack, 5-point loss to Brown, 4-point loss to Longwood, 4-point loss to Siena. They had so many close calls. This Maine team is a few possessions away from being around 500, right? Sometimes it is a game of just a few points here or there. They're able to beat Boston University, and that is a perfect transition into the weekly Kenny Payne Award because Ariel, I know you're staying in that city for that.
Yeah, I'll say in the conference.
Excuse me, that's take it away.
George Washington's been a team. If you listen to our CBB ranks, we were all super high on them, especially me and Matt. I think Dan was a little more tapered down than us, but still really like this team. And so far they looked okay this season. Definitely looked like a team that could win the A10, but not, like a top 25 team. And then all that good work went to waste on Wednesday. They played Delaware, who in the previous game lost to Delaware State, who had 0 D1 wins before that game. 22.5-point favorites going into the game. The game's at home, by the way, and they lose by double digits. They lose by 12. They got outscored by 10 in the second half. Not only does George Washington have to win the conference in order to make the tournament now, they have 0 at-large chances, but also for a conference that any win is important, as if they want to get more than 1 or 2 teams in. That win's not going to be as good anymore because they have that loss in their resume. So absolutely horrible loss for George Washington. That's going to have major ramifications on the rest of the year. And it's really sad to see, because I know we were all high on them and we had a lot of upside, but unfortunately, just not every game goes your way.
Dan, what do you have for your Kenny Payne Award?
Yeah, this one's kind of ironic because I am staying in the state here, but I'm going to Kentucky and the Wildcats for the Kenny Payne Award. Not Louisville, but Kentucky is now the disaster of the state. They are 6-4. Their 6 wins are bye games. Their losses are to the Louisville Cardinals, Michigan State, I think UNC, and Gonzaga by 35 points. But so all ranked teams, all solid teams, but it's not a competitive team right now. Their roster construction is really bad. They don't really have guys that can make a play. We're seeing like the opposite of this Mark Pope offensive genius type of stuff because a lot of just standing around, not running offensive actions. I think he was quoted in a press conference saying that he just wants 5 guys that could give him substantial effort. I don't know if this is a byproduct of a super expensive roster and people with egos and a lot of money. I don't know, because there's a lot of downside to that if it doesn't work. But yeah, even with Jalen Lowe coming back, it hasn't helped. Quaintance will come back at some point. He's not a game changer, though, so it's been bad for Kentucky.
Yeah, and I've got a team in the same conference, Dan, and that's Ole Miss, but more specifically Chris Beard for my Kenny Payne Award. Look, here's a guy that obviously you look at what he's done at Ole Miss over the past few years, and you almost feel like he could be a guy that jumps ship again, right? I hate to tell that to Ole Miss fans after losing Lane Kiffin, but now especially with Lane Kiffin out at Ole Miss, all the limelight is on Chris Beard and Ole Miss, right? He is the coach now that you pay attention to when Lane Kiffin goes. And what has Ole Miss done? Pretty much in that same timeline, they've lost 4 straight games. They're now 5-4 on the season, a 4-game losing streak. And guys, a lot of it's been winnable games, right? Single-digit losses to Iowa, Utah, Miami, and St. John's. And that St. John's game, all the road. 4 decent chances, all different levels of wins that could help you get to March Madness. Instead, they're pretty much going to go in the non-conference with no good wins. They have one more chance against North Carolina State. That's their last chance at having a decent non-conference win, because we can't count that Memphis game as a decent win. I know we weren't super high on Ole Miss this season. We didn't think they were going to be like a top 25 team or anything, but you felt like Chris Beard might be able to coach him back to the NCAA tournament, and it's just not going well for Ole Miss. And again, you got to put it on Chris Beard, a guy that probably wants to move on at some point, but at least in this point wants to keep building himself up at Ole Miss. And just not a good start to the season, especially recently for Beard and the Rebels. All right, let's move to the Bill Walton Award. This, Ariel, is where we go back to Boston. Sorry about confusing that. So now you can take it away with that.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about Earl Grant, the Boston College head coach. Look, that team has a lot not going well for them. And one thing that Earl Grant loves is A.J. DeBonsa, the BYU player. And he put out a tweet, if you have the graphic there, pretty much just highlighting how good he was. He calls him one of them ones. Naturally, you see a lot of responses on there, including one that said, "What's the hell of this tweet, bro?" And of course, the Boston College coach responds, basically saying, "If you're not at the games, I don't want to hear from you." Where he says, I am at the games and it's bad. And then he says, "Keep coming." So, look, Boston College, and I'll mention this was before they lost to UMass the very next day. So if you're Earl Grant, you know you're not getting an extension. Like, this Boston College team's comfortably the worst Power 5 team. So might as well have fun with it. And I think that's what he did. Now, obviously not a good look, especially since they lost and because what they're putting on the court is a really abysmal product, but not something you see every day where a head coach is kind of clapping back with their own fans.
Yeah.
Oh man, Dan, what do you got? I don't think we can top that. That's probably that would be the Bill Walton Award of the year so far.
No, I think there's a decent argument that it could be a Kenny Payne Award as well. For mine, this also could be either one, but it's Jeremy Fears and his stat line against Duke, against Duke for Michigan State in that 66-60 loss this past weekend. He went 0 for 10 from the field. He had a bad day, but he also had 13 assists to 1 turnover, so 0 field goals, 13 assists. I did some research, did some statistical diving, and this has happened 14 times in Division I basketball in the last 10 years, but only one time in Power Conference basketball in the last 10 years, and that is NC State's Markel Johnson, who had 0 points and 13 assists in a loss to Miami. He was a very interesting player. Good player for the Pack back at this point back in the day. But Fierce is also the only one to do it this year. And of that list of 14 players, he's the only one that has attempted 10-plus field goals. So 0 for 10, 13 assists. That's just a really weird stat line that I kind of wanted to dig into a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm going to go to, for my Bill Walton Award, December scheduling. People talk about college basketball needing to have better games at the start of the season, right? The first week is crucial. I know that's what people talk about. Some people say it needs to be the exact opposite. We have too many good ones. I don't know if you saw the Barstool tweet on that earlier in the year. I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go with December scheduling and say, look, the past few weeks, this past week, the next week, it's a little bit sparse. It's not great, right? And I know that you're coming off a feast week. You're having all these great games. and it's not totally going to match up to that. You had the ACC SEC challenge, so it kept you entertained for a little bit. I'm not saying that every single day in college basketball needs to be a great must-watch schedule. You're going to have a day or two where there's just not a whole lot of great games on, right? But here's the easy fix. And I also want to put out there, finals are out there. College students have to take finals. We know that college sports are the pros right now. Let's not act like it isn't. Like, it is pro sports. But at the same time, these are still student athletes, right? It is still one and the same. Guys, easy fix here. Play in-state games. It's not that hard to put a schedule or two. I know that you might not want to be flying out, and you might not want to, you want to limit travel because they actually have finals to study for, and there's important school to go on here. But let's at least have some better games. I think we could, schedule some in-state rivalries. UConn has a great schedule this week. I'll hand it to them. They obviously got a game against Texas coming up, and they already had the game earlier in the week against Florida. So that is one exception. But it's simple. UCLA doesn't have to go and fly out to Rutgers. They do that in the Big Ten schedule. They could easily play a game against Pepperdine. I'm not saying we need to have great games, but we should have more than 7 or 8 games for a whole week or two stretch each day of the week. That's just my Bill Walton Award. It's not really anything I saw in college basketball, more just looking at the schedule and saying, it's kind of annoying, kind of weird that we can't get any good games for a little bit of a stretch. What do you guys think, real quick? I want to hear your thoughts.
Good.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's really like we have to strike this like moment of truth in college sports, because the whole reason is like the whole they have to take finals and all that. But
yeah,
I don't know. If we stop labeling them as student athletes and really call them what they are, then I think that would kind of help. But also, we're focused very heavily on the top 25, like the power conference schools. There's still a vast majority of college basketball is planning on making good use of their college degree, like if we're talking about the scheme of the 365 teams. So I kind of have mixed feelings about that, but it is kind of frustrating how we're having all these amazing games on a college football Saturday, and then the following Saturday there's like 2 bowl games, and there's it's an okay slate now.
Yeah, I'll quickly mention I kind of agree. I'm fine with not having that many games during the week, just because these still are students, and I know like they're not studying as hard as some of the other students on campus, but you have to keep that balance. But when the only good game tomorrow or today, I guess, is Gonzaga, Texas, that just doesn't do it for me. It's a weekend.
UConn, Texas.
Sorry, UConn, Texas.
Yeah.
When we're at the point where it's a Friday, there's no finals going on that night, and there's only one good game, and Sunday isn't much better. You have to kind of stack those games more on the weekends, so we can still get those games even if during the week it's a little bit quieter.
And look, you never know how teams are going to be, so like I'm not going to fault like South Carolina State playing Queens. Like I'm sure we could have guessed South Carolina State wasn't going to be good, but we didn't know that it was going to be an 0-10 team versus a 4-5 team. But when half of the 11 games today feature a Division I team going against a non-Division I team, as we sit here on December 12th, that's what has to change. Like we can't be having these non-D1s playing D1s this late in the season with about a dozen games today, and half of them are not even worth watching. Like, I'm sorry to say, but those games are just not worth watching. That I think needs to change. Those are my 2 cents on that. Let's look at more takeaways from the week in the week in the past. Excuse me. Starting with the ACC Week 6 takeaways. Dan, what did you see out of this great conference?
Yeah, this great conference is a good way of putting it. I already alluded to it. Duke picks up a big win over Michigan State. They are building quite that resume already, and I think there's only a few teams in this country that can beat Duke, and Michigan State might be one of them, but they did not. So Duke remains strong. Louisville remains at that number 2 spot in the conference with a bounce-back win over Indiana. Couple of stock-up, stock-downs from the rest of the conference. SMU picked up their first actual legitimate win against a team with a pulse, beating Texas A&M 93-80. They are now 9-1, and Boopie Miller has really taken his game to the next level. I've always liked him, and I'm glad he's kind of proving me right there. Virginia Tech has also looked pretty good this week. They beat George Mason, who was undefeated at the time. Then they smoked Western Carolina, as they should. I think with Virginia Tech, everyone's talked about Neo of Dallas, and for good reasons. He just put up 30 the other night, but their leading scorer is actually the West Virginia transfer in Imani Hansberry. And between Abdallas, and presumably Toby Luwal is coming back, not soon, but at some point in conference play, I think this is really a top third team in the ACC. So stock up Virginia Tech, stock up SMU. I think stock down, I want to go with Cal. They ended up going 2-0, but they didn't really pass the eye test. They barely beat Pacific, kind of struggled with them. Then they were losing at half to Division II school in Dominican. I want to take them seriously because they're 9-1, but I don't see them going more than like 500 in conference play if they're lucky. So I think that's an easy pick that they're just going to regress.
Ariel, what do you have out of the Big 12 Week 6 takeaways?
I'll start by quickly reminding everyone, because Dan mentioned it in his earlier award, but BYU coming back from down 22 to beat Clemson on a buzzer beater 3 by Rob Ray. Really impressive win there. This team looks the real deal. I mean, they've won every game except for that UConn game that really has been a challenge. So a lot of credit to them. But I really want to highlight the 3 unbeaten teams left, because I believe there's only 7 left in all of college basketball, and 3 of them come from the Big 12, which is crazy to say. First one is Arizona, number 1 team in the country right now, and for good reason. They just beat Auburn, a top 25 team at the time, by 29 points at home. Really impressive win there. Then you got Iowa State, who maybe has the most impressive win of the season. They went to Purdue, one of the hardest places to play in college basketball, and absolutely dominated them. They won by 23. Josh Jefferson is unbelievable. Milan Momcilovic is, I think, the best shooter in the country. And then obviously Taylor Livesey and Toure are also really great players. So not sure who's going to beat them, and especially not Iowa, because they also beat them this week, beating them by 4 in the Cy-Hawk rivalry. And then finally Oklahoma State, one of the more forgotten undefeateds, just because they haven't played as good as a resume. But they beat Grand Canyon. They play Oklahoma on Saturday, who they should beat. Oklahoma does not look good this year. If they win that game, they're going to head into conference play undefeated, which, like I said, they haven't had the most impressive schedule, but it's still impressive to go undefeated. And I think a lot of people would not have picked that. I'd say almost everyone would have picked them to not be one of the last undefeated teams. So a lot of credit to Steve Lutz and co over there.
Yeah, 100%. I'll go to the Big East, where there are not any undefeated teams remaining. But I think overall a better week for the Big East. I'll start with the bad, though. Marquette, I think I bring them up every week. I'm going to be done after this week, because the 20-point loss at Wisconsin, that's the last straw to me. You just can't continue to lose games like by this much and by this many. Marquette just needs to figure it out. I mean, they just haven't looked good. They're 5-5 at this point in the season. It seems like it's a wash. I don't think they're going to go on a run. And I think Shaka Smart has some real thinking to do about what he's gonna do for the rest of his tenure at Marquette, because I think at this point it's not just a joke anymore. They seriously have to make changes in the way that he recruits. So that's Marquette right there for you. I mean, just bottom of the Big East. It's kind of sad to see, because this has been a pretty good program that benefited from realignment when realignment happened about a little over a decade ago, and now we're seeing Marquette just very, very much struggle in this transfer portal era. Also want to look at Villanova. 28-point loss to Michigan, but I oddly just don't think it really matters. I don't think that really shows much about Villanova, because Michigan's going to beat everyone by 30. I think that, honestly, I'm just going to say, hey, you know what? You lost by 28. I don't really care. Let's see what you do in your next couple against Pitt, Wisconsin, and then at Seton Hall. I think that's a big stretch for Villanova to really see if this team is better under Kevin Willard, or if they're going to need a year or two to really get back, or if he's been able to elevate them in just 1 year there. But I want to highlight a few good teams, right? Xavier seems to be playing better, right? Xavier was one of the low points when the Big East was first getting started this season. But that 5-point win over Cincinnati in that Skyline Chili crosstown shootout. Look, Trey Carroll, he played under Dusty May at FAU, and you're seeing it right now. You're seeing it. He had 30 points in that game against Cincinnati. Shot about every shot, 14 for 23. I mean, when you're that efficient, keep shooting it, right? You kind of hate sometimes when guys just don't shoot it. And he kind of proved that point, right? Like, it's going in, I'm going to keep putting it up. And he led them to a big win over Cincinnati. So really helping the Big East there. And then the team really just leading the Big East, Connecticut. Like, I mean, that win over Florida, it was impressive. Florida's rebounding. UConn struggles to rebound besides Terrace Reed. But Terrace Reed was playing great in that game. Obviously coming back from injury still. Just UConn, right? Like they're playing for another 1 seed this season. They are the top of the Big East, and that is my Big East takeaways from Week 6. Let's move on. How about to the mid-major takeaways, Dan? We'll send it back to you for your Week 6 takeaways from all of mid-major land.
Yeah, so again, I like to do where I just highlight a couple teams, but before getting to that, just no more undefeated teams in mid-major land. The last two have fallen. George Mason was.
Didn't Miami? Aren't they still undefeated?
Miami, Ohio?
Yeah.
Are they?
Thought so.
They are.
Okay. My mistake. Miami, Ohio is 9-0. So good correction there.
The schedule in the country. I'll just add that quickly.
Yeah. So Miami of Ohio, somehow that slipped me. But so there's one more undefeated. George Mason lost to Virginia Tech, and then Buffalo lost to St. Bonaventure. Somehow missed Miami there. But three teams I want to highlight. New Mexico. New Mexico, we wrote them off after a couple early season losses, but they've bounced back since with 5 straight wins, including one over Mississippi State, Santa Clara, most recently at VCU. So they're 8-2, and Eric Olin, I know, doesn't have like the same horses that Richard Pitino had, but I think he's doing fine. I think they'll be a very competitive team in the Mountain West. Going down, we're going to go with East Tennessee State. They are first in Torvik rankings in the SoCon, and this is a really down year overall for the SoCon, it looks like. But at 8-2, they got 2 guys on the inside that could really go get buckets, and Cam Morris and Blake Barkley. Blake Barkley coming from Northwestern as a transfer. So they're setting up for their best season since Steve Forbes was there. And then Tulsa. How about Tulsa? They're coming out of absolutely nowhere, and they're one of the contenders, I want to say, in the American Conference, probably like 3 or 4 if I were to rank it before conference play really gets underway. Head coach Eric Conkle was 34-60 in his first 3 years. Well, now Tulsa is 9-1 with one of the more electric offenses in mid-major basketball. They're shooting 41.6% as a team with a top 50 3-point frequency in terms of how often they take it. So they're over 40% and shooting it a lot. That's a good formula for success. So those are my 3 teams to highlight: New Mexico, East Tennessee State, and Tulsa.
All right. What do you got out of the SEC?
You guys ready for this?
Oh, no.
I'm going to go through every single notable game the SEC played this week. So pretty much any game against a team that wasn't like a low mid-major.
Okay.
Kentucky played Gonzaga. They get blown out. Auburn plays Arizona, they get blown out. Tennessee plays Illinois, they lose to them. Ole Miss plays St. John's, lose to them. ASU versus Oklahoma, ASU blows them out. LSU versus Texas Tech blows them out. Mizzou versus Kansas blows them out. Mississippi State loses to San Francisco. A&M loses to SMU in overtime. And then finally, Florida loses to UConn. So if you're keeping score at home, that's 0-9 with a negative 17.7 margin last week against any major competition. The whole thing with the SEC last year was their non-conference was so good that we can justify putting these teams in the tournament, even though they won 5 or 6 or even 7 games in conference play. Mm-hmm. This year, that's definitely not the case. I mean, there's a couple good teams at the top like Vanderbilt and Alabama, but a lot of these other teams just haven't built up the resume in the non-conference to justify putting them in over some of these other teams like in the Big 12 or the ACC, like you mentioned, has been a lot better than expected. So not the best end to the non-conference and the best start to December, but there's still a lot of talent there. Hopefully they can turn things around before conference play starts.
Wow. That is some crazy stats there. So I give it to you there, Ariel. I'm going to go to the Big Ten takeaways to finish out our conference takeaways here. I'll go a little bit quicker because I got 5 teams I want to highlight. Oregon again, 5-game losing streak. Could have been my Kenny Payne Award for sure. I mean, they've lost 5 straight. You talk about a team that had expectations and just clearly they might be one of the worst teams in power conference basketball right now. I really don't know what the fix is because I still somewhat believe that they have enough talent to be a tournament team. But I'll be real, the last 5 or 6 years, when we do preseason predictions, I've said, hey, I think Oregon could be a team to watch because we never rate them that high. And maybe there's a reason we don't rate them that high is because they really haven't been that good. So that's Oregon. We'll see if they can turn it around. Got to move to Indiana. Probably should have started with them. 44 points from Lamar Wilkerson. Assembly Hall scoring record. 10 threes in a game. Just an outstanding game played by one of the best stories in college basketball. Just seems like just a great guy, a great teammate, and obviously a great scorer. And talk about Indiana. After losing to Minnesota and losing to Louisville, I know it's Penn State. and they've done this a few times against inferior competition, but just showing you again that they can be one of the most feared scoring teams in the country. Got to move to Iowa. That loss to Michigan State, that was really the first tough competition they played. They had some games against Xavier and Ole Miss, and they got blown out by Michigan State. Bennett Sturts got shut down. But look at Iowa State. Iowa finding a way to keep in it defensively. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say they figured stuff out because Bennett Sturts was 3 for 11 from the field, right? He didn't have a great game again. But at least you kept things close with the number 4 team in the country, and Iowa State team that has looked absolutely dominant in all facets of the game. So at least props to Ben McCollum for finding a way to at least keep this one close. We'll see if they can figure it out the rest of the Big Ten schedule. Illinois, I got to look at Illinois. You know, that win against Tennessee when they got that bounce-back win, and then the win at Ohio State. Illinois is one of my favorite teams in the country. I know they were on my short list of maybe winning it all, and I stand by that. They just look like they've been playing some great basketball. And, of course, talking about basketball, Nebraska ball, right? 10-0, blowing out Wisconsin. They've blown out some decent teams. They blew up Creighton. They blew up Wisconsin. They can score the ball. They showed defense in that game. Rink Mask, I feel like I bring him up all the time, but he is one of the best players in the Big Ten. Should be up for Big Ten Player of the Year, in my opinion. I believe, I'll be real, like Nebraska's for real. They are in that upper echelon of the Big Ten. So that's my Big Ten takeaways. Excuse me, I feel like I have to sneeze, guys. Jeez, that's awkward. We'll move on from the takeaways. We will go into our game picks. We do have a guest picker, but he's not picking games with us. He's going to be previewing the Gonzaga UCLA game, so you'll want to stick around from that, a former Gonzaga player. I'll tease a little bit later and tell you who it is. But first, to our game picks, guys. If you're all ready, we'll start. Arkansas and Texas Tech. We'll go Ariel, Dan, and then me. We'll do it in that order. So, Ariel, who do you have in Arkansas and Texas Tech Saturday at noon on ESPN2?
Yeah, I think this comes down to guards versus forwards. Can Arkansas's forwards match up with JT Toppin? Can Texas Tech's guards match up with Acuff and Malik Thomas? I think that Texas Tech has a slight advantage here. I think they were struggling, but winning against LSU by that much really boosted their confidence and got them back on the right track. So I'm going to go Texas Tech here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Texas Tech as well. I think Toppin has himself a big day. Yeah, I'm going to go with Texas Tech.
I'm actually going to go with Arkansas here. I feel like Arkansas has the rebounding to at least, Toppin will have some games where he's just dominant inside. I think Arkansas has enough to be able to limit him. And obviously Darius Acuff, I mean, he's just been outstanding. So I think Arkansas gets this one done. It's a great game. And like you mentioned, Ariel, SEC really needs something to get going here. So I'll say Arkansas starts turning the tide in the right favor. Let's go to another game between SEC and Big 12. It's Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Ariel, Saturday at 1 on Fox.
I love in-state rivalry games, but I don't think this one would be great. I think this Oklahoma team is really bad, to be honest, and the SEC is really bad, to be honest, in the bottom half this year, and Oklahoma is one of those teams. Oklahoma State's undefeated, like we talked about. I think they're going to keep that going.
Yeah, that's the thing. Oklahoma State has been not beating these great teams, but they've just passed the eye test. They've looked really good. I'm not sure they're going to finish in the top 25, but I think they're very superior to Oklahoma. Rivalry factor might keep it close, but I can't pick against Oklahoma State right now.
Gonzaga's front court just destroyed Oklahoma. Oklahoma State is averaging 42 rebounds per game. So to me, that rebounding is going to give them the edge over this Oklahoma team after seeing that one. Give me Oklahoma State in this one. Let's go to a Big Ten game, Ariel. Nebraska, Illinois, two teams that have been playing some of the best ball in the Big Ten. Who wins this one?
Nebraska with the longest winning streak in college basketball right now, going back to last year. Illinois is looking strong as well. They just beat Tennessee. I like Illinois here. I think they just have more than enough to get it done.
Yeah, same here. Man, I'm hoping we could disagree on something, but 3 for 3 so far, we are agreeing. Illinois has just had a super high-powered offense, one of the best offenses in the country. They've been getting it from all around. I think they've, I want to say 4 guys with 14-plus points per game.
Yep. Outstanding.
Yeah, they rebound, they distribute, they do everything. I love watching this team.
Yeah, 5 averaging at least 11 a game, but 4 averaging at least 14.6 a game. I mean, that's incredible. Look, I know I just talked a lot about Nebraska, and I really do like this Nebraska team, but with this one being at Illinois, Keaton Wagler has just been playing fantastic too. I mean, he's been absolutely amazing for this Illinois team. Who knew? I mean, you had so many guys that you figured would be the guys, and then he joins the pack. It's like, geez, like this team just has so many guys. Give me Illinois at home. How about kind of their counterparts, Illinois State and Utah State, two teams that we figured to be pretty good this year. They've kind of lived up to the bill. Ariel, who wins this battle of mid-major teams?
If you ask me in the preseason, I'd probably go Illinois State. I really like this team, but they just haven't looked as good as I thought. Pretty much every big game, not big, but like compared to their standards game that they've played, they've either lost or barely won. And Utah State's looked really impressive. They probably look like the favorite in the Mountain West with San Diego State struggles. So I'll go Utah State. This one is in Salt Lake City, by the way. So home court advantage, quote unquote, but it's still a neutral game.
Yeah. Those are always weird. There's a bunch of those in this slate. I think the thing with Illinois State, Johnny Kinzinger, the 5'11" point guard, he actually, despite Illinois State being successful so far, he has not been nearly as good as he was last year. Interesting little tidbit. Illinois State is top 25 in turnover offense. Utah State is top 25 in turnover defense. So I think that's kind of the game within the game there. I'm going to go with the Redbirds. First disagreement here. I'm going to go with Illinois State.
I'm also going to go with Illinois State. Utah State really just has two guys that they go to, Mason Falslev and MJ Collins. After that, it's just kind of by committee. So I look at an Illinois State team like, hey, you put in a good defensive game plan, you shut down one of those guys, be okay with the other one going for 20 to 25, and I think that might be enough to get this one done. I realize it's kind of a home game for Utah State, but yeah, I like Illinois State. They have been playing a little bit better, hasn't been against great competition, but I think they get it here and show us why, prove to us why we did think that they were going to be a team to watch in mid-major hoops. Let's move to Kansas at North Carolina State. This is Saturday at 5:30 on ESPN.
I think it's pretty obvious where I'm going to go here. Yeah. I think I picked Kansas in every game, and it hasn't really worked for me, but I'm going to have to go with them again. Darren Peterson's back. He looked pretty good in that game against Missouri, and I think overall I trust this Kansas team more than NC State. They've been pretty underwhelming, all things considered, compared to where a lot of people thought. While Kansas, I think, has surprised a lot of people, what they were able to do without Peterson. With him back, I think they win this game.
Yeah, I'm just so glad that whole, Peterson's going to sit out and not play this year and just prepare for. I'm so glad that was just all nonsense. They have a very well-rounded offense. I think that this is more of the game where they just let it fly from three, and Peterson has a big game. NC State just looks so uninspiring. I know they have the home court advantage here, and they're talented. They have a good coach, but I got to go with Kansas.
I'll switch it up here, guys. Kansas is 0-1 in the state of North Carolina this season. I'm going to say they go 0-2. Give me the Wolfpack here. Sorry about that, Ariel.
It's okay.
Let's go Indiana and Kentucky. Hey, guys, can this be like the Indiana-Kentucky game we saw 14 years ago with Christian Watford hitting a game winner? Or does it not even be close and Kentucky lose a fifth game this season?
Yeah, if you asked like a month ago, this would be our game of the week without a doubt. But both teams have definitely been underwhelming of the last couple games. Obviously, you mentioned Kentucky earlier on, but I don't know. I've been going back and forth on this one. I think I have to trust Kentucky just because all the big games Indiana's played, they just haven't lived up to the standard. Well, neither has Kentucky, but I trust their home court here. But I don't know. This game could really go either way.
Are we sure that, I'm tired of giving Kentucky the benefit of the doubt in these games. Are we sure that this is one of those games for Indiana, or is it one of those games where they just have success over an inferior opponent? Maybe that's how I qualify this game, because I think Kentucky is just a disaster right now, and I went to depth on it on the award segment, so I don't need to go much more. But yeah, I think Indiana is showing me a lot more, at least on the offensive end so far.
I think both teams are pretty soft, and I just trust Indiana and Darian DeVries to figure that out and to almost preach to his team like, hey, Kentucky's soft, so let's go out and out-physical them. I don't think Mark Pope really has that with his team right now. Mark Pope is literally benching players because they're not playing hard enough, right? Yeah. Like he took what's-his-name out of the game Garrison out of the game. And when you're doing that, I can't pick with you. I'm not going to sit here and say Indiana's going to win this game by 10 points, but sure, give me Indiana on the road. Let's go to LSU and SMU, two surprise teams here, both only with one loss, so could have an undefeated matchup here if they would have been able to hang on. But does LSU get the win, or are the Mustangs going to take this one for the ACC, Ariel?
Yeah, 2 one-loss teams. Definitely not as good as their record shows, but you have to commend them for winning the games they should. LSU blew out DePaul, but then they took Boston College to overtime, who we mentioned is comfortably the worst Power 5 team, and then they got blown out against Texas Tech. So I'm going to lean SMU here. I don't think they're a great team, but I still think they can win this game pretty easily.
Yeah, I think the winner of this game we kind of feel a lot better about, and the loser we could just, they're fraud. I don't know if it's that simple, but this one's in New Orleans, so like one of those weird, not technically neutral sites, but a lot closer to one school than the other kind of games. I'm go with LSU.
SMU is 2-1 in the SEC. This is their 4th straight game against an SEC opponent, which is kind of crazy scheduling. So I don't know if that's them showing that they don't really think they belong in the ACC, and they're trying to pitch to the SEC, hey, we need to make the move over here in basketball at least. But give me SMU again. You guys already know it. I've been on this team since the beginning of the season. I know they really haven't lived up fully to that potential. They've had some close games. They got blown out at Vanderbilt, but I like them here. I just don't really trust this LSU team. Boopie Miller, too. He's 6th in the country in assists per game, so he is still playing outstanding. So, yeah, give me the Mustangs. All right, into Game of the Week territory. Not our Game of the Week quite yet. Definitely could have been. Number 1 Arizona against number 12 Alabama. Jaden Bradley's chance to get a win over his former team in Alabama. Ariel, do you think his former team gets it or his current team does?
Yeah, this game's in Birmingham, so definitely Alabama heavy. Every time Arizona's been tested, they've passed, and they're passing comfortably now. We saw what they did against Auburn, another team in the state of Alabama. Obviously, that game was in Arizona, but still really impressive nonetheless. I just can't go against Arizona until they give me a reason to. This team is just a complete team between Bradley and Koa P and Krivas, and even the bench looks really solid. So I'm going to go with the Wildcats here.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm bought into this Alabama defense yet either. I know offense has been their calling card under Nate Oates, but when they've been like top 30, top 35-ish defensively, that's when they've been more than fine to just outscore teams basically in shootouts. Again, it's the well-roundedness of Arizona. It's the fact that they're deservedly the number 1, if not number 2 team in the country. There's an argument for Michigan, but I think Alabama's a little more flawed at this point. It's going to be a fun game, though. I can't wait for this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. I think Arizona's scheduled the best in the country, and you're seeing it pay off right now. They start with number 3 Florida. They said, hey, you know what? We're just going to show teams if we're real or we're not, and people remember that, right? It's the first big game of the season. Arizona gets the win. Then they have a couple tune-up games, and then they get right back to it against UCLA and against UConn. And instead of having a feast week, right, they still scheduled tough teams, right? You had that UCLA game 5 days later at UConn, but then you had about a couple weeks off against Auburn, and they haven't played in a week. So I just love the scheduling that they put together to make sure they're not going to run their guys, and just get them all tired in this early non-conference schedule, but they're going to really challenge them against some top competition. And yeah, not only that, but I just believe in this team. I just think Arizona, right up there with Michigan, is the top 2 teams in the country. So give me Arizona on the road here in Alabama territory, and just kind of proving once again why I think this team can definitely win it all. Let's move to Tennessee and Louisville. This should be another good one. Tennessee really needs to win. Obviously, Louisville, they kind of need the win as well. I mean, this is a pretty good game. That should say number 20 Tennessee, by the way, and number 11 Louisville.
You're right.
Correct that real quick. So, who do we have in this game, Mario?
Tennessee, like you mentioned, they're really struggling. They've lost 3 in a row, including that loss to Illinois. So for that reason, I'll go Louisville. They looked really impressive against Indiana. I think that their shooting is really impressive. McNeely looked great. Michael Brown continues to look great. And even their bigs look pretty solid. So give me Louisville in this one. I think it'll be close, though. I think defensively, Tennessee will do enough to keep it close.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by kind of what this game will look like stylistically, right? I don't know what Louisville's going to – like, I think that'll be the determining factor, too, is whether Louisville could get their shots off cleanly. The thing is, they have shooters that don't need a lot of space, particularly McNeely. He's obviously been getting a lot more better looks here at Louisville than he did at Virginia, and him just being able to pull up in transition and get open threes is something that's just a joy to watch. I still think Tennessee is able to muck up this game, and I believe in this Tennessee team. I really do. I think they're in true talent, they're going to be a top 3 seed. I think they're going to do well in the SEC, and I think they're going to start with a road win here against Louisville.
Yeah, you know what? Give me Louisville here. Tennessee hasn't been playing great, and honestly, Jacoby Gillespie's been getting shut down. So I think if you're Louisville, shut him down again. That's the key to success here. I know Tennessee's without J.P. Estrella. That was kind of a big one as well. Just not going well for this Vols team after it seemed pretty promising at first. And yeah, Louisville's just looked great, honestly. They've looked great. I know at number 11, I'm not going to say they're like that tier 1, like clear Final Four contender, but they're pretty close. So give me the Cardinals at home. And out to our game of the week. Again, we do have a guest picker. He's not joining us here because we had to have him on earlier, but I will toss to that. After we pick this game, you'll hear from Khalif Battle, who spent 1 year with Gonzaga, and he kind of previews the team. He just played for him last season, so we know some of the players still. He previews this game, talked about his time at Gonzaga, and that's a good listen. So you'll want to stick around for that. But first, we got to pick this game. Ariel, who do you have between UCLA and Gonzaga?
I actually think that UCLA will do a good job on Gonzaga's front court. I think Bulldogs looked a lot better. The big question is going to be Dent, and I think him going from one of the fastest offenses to one of the slowest offenses has definitely been a problem, and teams are starting to realize that now, and I think he's starting to realize that now, and that's why his production isn't as good. I don't know. There's just something about this UCLA team I like, and Gonzaga has really proven to win every game that they've had to, except for that Michigan game, but I'm going to actually go with the upset here and go with UCLA.
Yeah, this game will just be a battle of the interior, who's able to win inside. Neither team has been really making their living from behind the arc. I trust the Fighting Graham Ikes here. Give me Gonzaga.
I'm going to go Gonzaga as well. Again, that Michigan game, just toss it out the window. Like, whatever at this point. And especially because it was the third game in 3 days. Like, I'm just not going to really say here and say, hey, Gonzaga, like I think if they played Michigan, I think it really would be close. I do think Gonzaga's right up there. To me, they're a top 5 team in the country. UCLA's been playing better, yeah, but look, Gonzaga also, with that Oregon game not being as big as it was before, because Oregon's just been so terrible. This is Gonzaga's last chance at a good win in the non-conference. So I think they realize, hey, with our conference schedule, we need to get a win here against this UCLA team and really make the non-conference count. I think Mark Few knows that. I think this team knows that. They've got the experience that knows it. Give me Gonzaga in a late tip-off if you're staying up Saturday night.
Yeah.
All right, now we're going to toss it to my interview with Khalif Battle. So hope you enjoy that. All right, and joining the show now here on CBB Review Studio is Khalif Battle, of course, spent 1 year at Gonzaga. Thanks for joining us. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing well as well. So I take it first off, you're playing in Italy right now. How's that been going for you?
It's been good. It's a transition. I think European basketball, high level European basketball is definitely different. But I'm handling it great. I'm learning every day and I'm getting better every day. So it's been great for me.
All right, so we on the podcast made our picks for some of the games of the week, and our actual game of the week is, of course, UCLA and Gonzaga. This one branded as the Seattle Hoops shootout, by the way, so not technically at Gonzaga, but pretty much going to be a home game. I'll start with an easy one for you, though. How have you been liking this Gonzaga team so far this season?
I love this team. I think, in all honesty, I think this team is better than the team I was on last year. I think this team plays way better on the defensive end. And I think Graham and B Huff, those are the two leaders of the team, of course. They took a extra stride that the team needed. You know what I'm saying? So I think Graham himself is probably the best player in college basketball, and then B Huff is right under him. And then they have great guys to complement those guys. And I love the new kid, Tyron Foster. I think he's a great addition. And to attribute to other guys, some of the guys that have been there that redshirted last year, I think the team is just in great hands right now.
Let's stick with Graham Ike and Braden Huff for a little bit because, probably one of the best front courts in the country, I would say right now, from what I've seen from Gonzaga. Khalif, UCLA has struggled on the boards. Mick Cronin has made that apparent in some press conferences earlier. When you see what Huff and Ike can do, this game in particular, I mean, how much of an advantage do you think that's going to give them over this Bruins team?
I think it's a huge advantage because I think the game plan is they're going to double team them because you have to. And we got guys that can really shoot the ball. So, I mean, once they double Graham and B Huff always going to make the right decision, be able to pass the ball out the post. And I mean, if you don't double, or even if you do double, it's still probably going to be a bucket. So I mean, I'm always rolling with my Zags. I'm always rolling with my guys. So I think it's going to be a great game for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, UCLA started the season a little bit shaky. They've won 2 straight there in the Big Ten. How much do you know about this UCLA team? Sorry if I'm putting you on the spot with that a little bit, but when you look at this UCLA team, Khalif, what do you see out of this Bruin squad?
Um, I haven't really seen a lot about UCLA, but I know Sky Clark is there. I know they have some of the guys from last year still there. So I mean they're a great and talented team. Um, you know, Coach Cronin is still an amazing coach. You know what I'm saying? He's done a lot for the game for college basketball on his own. Um, but we owe him from last year. I only played like 2 minutes last year. I'm still mad, a little salty about that one. We would have had him at the Intuit Dome. But I know I'm gonna take Graham and the guys from last year, B. Smith, B. Huff. I know they got my back this year, and they're gonna bring the W home for the Zags.
Yeah, when it is kind of a revenge game like that, and guys that were on the team, obviously, I mean, this era of the transfer portal, where players may not be on the same team for a rematch game, but obviously, you guys, Gonzaga does have that this season. How much more when you're facing a team for a second time? You lose them 1 year, you're playing them the next. Like, do players really look at that as a revenge game, or is it just the next game on the schedule?
Oh no, absolutely. Absolutely, because at least it's college basketball is so great because you can lose a game, but if you schedule two, for that 1 year, then the next year, whoever lost has got a bad taste in their mouth the whole year. So when you in the gym late night getting them shots up, you thinking about those guys that you probably didn't have the best game against who you lost to. And I think this is one of those teams, that we felt like we should have got last year. So I mean, we handled business against Kentucky. Now it's time to handle business against UCLA. That's it.
I got a couple more for you, and then we'll just get your pick from you. But obviously, 1 year at Gonzaga. What do you miss the most from your time as a Zag?
Just the camaraderie. I still text Ryan. I still text Nolan. I still text Graham. I still text everybody on the team. I miss those guys. Truly. I mean, I think, they opened me with open arms. And those are guys that I've known for a year, but it feels like I've known them a lifetime. Same thing with the coaches. I still text Coach Few and still text Coach Gentry, um, Coach Barsh, Coach B Mike. So everybody, we still in the loop, and I'm still in tune with what's going on. And when they say once a Zag, always a Zag, that's 100% true.
You mentioned that you think this year's team is playing better than last year's team. Obviously, Gonzaga, you guys have been on a roll for a while. I mean, we're talking decades since Mark Few has been there. But what do you notice that might make this team special? Because I'll be real, for what I've seen on this team, they seriously do look like a Final Four contender this season. They've been blowing teams out of the gym. Obviously, you look at the one loss that they had. It's tough to play 3 games in 3 days like that. So with all that into consideration, I mean, why do you think this team is so much more talented?
Honestly, I think they just play really well together. They mesh really well together. Not that we didn't. I just think that they just took it to a whole nother level. I think the guys that were a part of the team I was on last year saw the little things that could have been better, and I think they attributed that to this team this year for sure. And you could tell. I mean, nobody's fighting over shots. Nobody's fighting over anything but defense. I think these guys defensively are just on a whole nother level. And I can't wait to see how the year goes. But right now, I'm super excited. Every single time they're playing, I'm staying up real late trying to grab some popcorn to see the show every single time.
100%. Before I let you go, I got to get your game pick. I probably know you're rolling with the Zags, so why don't you tell me how much they're going to beat UCLA by?
I got them 15 or more, 15 or better.
15 or more. Okay. I don't know what the spread is, but I would assume that's probably covering. Khalif, I appreciate you coming on and joining us here today on CBB Review Studio. Best of luck to you as well with your pro career going.
Thank you, and thanks for having me up here. Go Zags.
All right, so that was Khalif Battle. Again, obviously he's going with the Zags, guys. And, hey, we think this could be a closer game, but I know that we kind of all agreed, besides Ariel here, that Gonzaga is going to get the win. So that should be a good one. It should be a good slate as well as we approach mid-December here in college basketball, getting closer and closer to conference play taking over. But for Dan Siegel, for Ariel Putterman, I'm Matt Majinski saying thanks for watching and listening. Hope you enjoyed, and we will talk to you next time.